Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're delighted to have you here for the second in our Arts and Lecture series. I'm Jane Plitt, and I am president of the Library Foundation, and we are thrilled to be partnering with the Manatee Performing Arts Center in our first year of offering these interesting experiences with authors. And tonight we are going to be in for a real treat. Jeff Lindsay, as many of you know, is the author of 8 books about Dexter, and you will have the opportunity to purchase Dexter is Dead after the lecture, and he will be delighted to sign your books. And we will be delighted to have your questions after Jeff speaks. I just wanted to give you a little background about Jeff beyond the Dexter background and accomplishments. His wife is Hillary Hemingway, the niece of, guess who, Ernest. And according to Jeff, she plays a critical role in helping him when he gets stuck on plot and the like, and she herself is an accomplished author. They teamed up for 4 books, which I'm sure our library can furnish you, so that you'll have an opportunity to see how they work together. Jeff himself is he said, his 40th career, and just so you can appreciate his background, he led a regional theater group. He was a director. He may even sing for you because he also has a musical background. He was a comedian, but most of all, he is an extraordinarily talented writer and author, and would you warmly welcome him?
I'm just guessing, nothing on TV tonight? Is it? It's on. And you know, because it's such a great crowd, I won't do what I usually do, testing a microphone, which is just and you on or not. Yeah, the frustrated performer comes out a lot, so I hope you'll bear with me as we go through this together. I want you to think of it as a process where we'll all grow together towards a common goal of a new understanding of the way things really are. I feel like I'm showing up for my first day of class with all of this stuff. I was lucky enough to produce Paul Krasner's stand-up show for a while. Does anyone remember Paul Krasner? Show of hands. Yeah. For those of you who don't know, he was the founder and editor of The Realist magazine. He's the man behind the Disneyland Memorial Orgy poster that you may have seen. For my money, the best thing he ever did, when Larry Flint, the editor and publisher of Hustler, was shot and hospitalized for 6 months, he asked Paul to edit Hustler magazine for him while he was in the hospital. And Paul's response was, among other things, the cover of the Easter issue, which featured a Playboy bunny nailed to a cross. So needless to say, Paul and I became friends. And one of the things he always did, and I should have told the thing afterwards because I almost forgot why I brought up Paul Krasner. He always had a tangent spotter, someone who he thought looked like they were paying attention, and when he rambled too far from the point, as can happen with habitual users of substances that are only legal in a few states. And he asked this tangent spotter to get him back on track when he wandered and became lost. I'm thinking about doing that tonight because the last 2 times I've done this, I've forgotten that I actually have some magnificent swag to give away. So I need to be reminded of this. All right? I will try not to stumble too much. This is only the third stop of this fantastic and endless book tour. I spend most of my life sitting in a torn t-shirt and a pair of boxer shorts in a dark room. So when I get out on the road again, it always takes a little while to get the mouth muscles working again. Because most days, all I say is, My wife accuses me of reenacting scenes from Young Frankenstein. Anyway, this is hard for me, believe it or not, because one of the reasons I failed, both as an actor and as a comedian, is not from talent, which you may judge for yourself later when I'm not listening, but because I find it hard to talk about myself. Of course, as an actor, this is the #1 requirement of the job. And as a comedian, the best comedy comes from telling true stuff. People always say, tell me a joke if you're funny. Well, okay, anyone can tell a joke. To my understanding, a real comedian tells truth in a way that makes you laugh. So that means talking about yourself, and I could never do it, but this is where the story starts. The lecture part, you were promised a lecture. This is how you become a writer. So you'll know the warning signs to avoid. My first published work was when I was 6 years old. A couple of poems I'd written were picked up and put into a hardback national anthology of children's poetry. I didn't take the hint. I was going to be an inventor. I hadn't come across math or chemistry or anything like that yet, so I didn't know better. All through high school and college, I would try other things and get sidetracked and somehow keep coming back to writing. When I was in college, I discovered theater, I should say rediscovered. When I was also 6 or 7 years old, I had a very important part in a major equity production of The Brave Little Tailor. And with your indulgence, I will reenact my gripping, riveting, and heart-wrenching scene for you right now. The giant is coming! The giant is coming! Thank you. But in college, as I say, I got re-enchanted with theater, and I thought that was what I was going to do. And as a graduation present, and this is unique too, my parents gave me admission to clown school at the Celebration Mime Theater in Maine. Now this is serious clowning, and I have a serious beef against what most people consider clowns, because although Ringling Brothers are, a name to be reckoned with in this area, their clowns today do not actually clown. They are taught a specific makeup pattern that other clowns have been using for 150 years, and they are taught the specific act that they will do. As an example, you might see he's got a goose on a string behind him, and when he runs, the goose goes after him going, wah, 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 wah. Nobody knows what that means anymore. It was only funny when people encountered geese every day, and we don't now. We think, oh, why is a goose chasing him? Huh. But geese actually did behave that way. Anyway, who's my tangent spotter? If I get off on the care and feeding of geese, you know I'm off track. So I was a professional clown for a while. And my big, probably the highlight, was doing the halftime show at a Syracuse University football game. But of course I was dragged back into theater. I ended up producing and directing one, a dinner theater, and that led me back to graduate school in theater. And I came out, and this is one of the first pullbacks, major ones. I went in as a director, and I came out as a playwright. And I even got with a rep company, a traveling rep company, where I was an actor. And they came to me midway through the season and said, the new play we were going to do, the playwright died. Could you write one for us? And I was a writer again. And I started my own rep company, and we went out to California with it. And one of the first requirements, because the other 3 founders were directors, and I wasn't going to be directing that much, they said, why don't you write some plays? So I was a writer again. When that broke up, I was in a rock band, and I was so proud of that band. The Fabulous Dorks, we really should have made it. But the guys said, we don't want to just do covers. Why don't you write some good lyrics, and we'll see what we come up with. So I'm a writer again. I started doing stand-up, and this is going to be a serious digression because I have to tell the joke. I started doing stand-up, and a certain joke caused me to reconsider that. But my friends thought that the way my mind worked in coming up with that joke showed great talent and would I consider writing material for them. And I was a writer again. The joke. I have to tell you, I think this is one of the funniest jokes I have ever heard. Certainly the funniest joke I've ever written. And I have told this joke hundreds of times, all over the world, and I have never once, not once, gotten a laugh. Until I say, that was the joke. So in fairness, here it is. I had to work my way through college, came from a relatively poor family with 4 kids, and so I thought I would try to do odd jobs to help pay my tuition. And the first day I tried this, I knocked on the door and a lady opened it, and I said, hi, my name is Jeff, and I'm working my way through college doing odd jobs, and I wonder if you had any. And she said, sure, fill these beach balls with insects. That was the joke. Because you see, to actually fill a beach ball with insects would be a really odd... So somehow I was a writer again. Yeah, it is too. And the other thing that happened was that at about that time, I ran into a kid I had known since I was very young. Our families were good friends. We'd taken a few vacations together and a lot of sailing trips and camping trips and things. And her name was Hillary Hemingway, and she'd come out to Hollywood to work on a screenplay for Republic Pictures. And she came to see one of my plays. And she said, you know, it was exactly that scene in City Slickers where he goes, she said, you know, you'd be really good if you just did one thing. I said, yeah, but which one? And she said, well, I just saw your play. How about writing? We became writing partners, and I was a writer again, and this time pretty much for good. We were writing partners for almost 3 years, and very good friends, and we didn't want to jeopardize that by starting a romantic relationship, because in Hollywood, you can find lots of people to sleep with, but finding a writing partner you can work with is really hard. And that jumps ahead just a few years to when Dexter was born. Now, I've been doing the Dexter Roadshow for a while, and there are FAQs, and one of the FAist of them is, where did I get the idea for Dexter? And at this time, I had a couple of books out that really met with remarkable mediocrity. And I should mention, by the way, I thought they were pretty good books, and I'm only saying that because they're being reissued now as ebooks. And if you look for Tropical Depression, that was my first book. It is a mystery/thriller. And the unpublished sequel to it is Red Tide, which will also be out at the same time. And I'm very fond of them, and I have to say this is a weird experience to read over again something that I wrote over 20 years ago, because I found myself reading it just as if it was a book. And I'm going, wow, this is good. Can't say that, stop. So those will be out. I never did appoint a tangent spotter, did I? Anyway, so I was asked, I notice I'm in the Kiwanis Theater tonight. Are there any Kiwanis present? Okay, because I have a great fondness for the Kiwanis. I was in Key Club in high school, which everyone knows is a Kiwanis front organization. And the Kiwanis asked me if I would come in to their weekly businessmen's luncheon and talk a little bit about why you should read at least one book before you die. And so I'm sitting at the head table in this big room, and I'm looking at a room filled with madly chattering ambulance-chasing lawyers, realtors, and because it's South Florida, bail bondsmen, and they're all glad-handing and shaking hands and handing out business cards with these horrible fake smiles on their face and talking with food in their mouth, which I was raised to believe is really wrong. And it occurred to me as I watched this unfolding out in front of me, and I don't know honestly where the idea came from, but it just popped into my head that serial murder, it's not always a bad thing, is it? Okay, I'm switching characters for a second. And thus Dexter was born. So I started taking notes. What do I mean by that? On those greasy little cocktail napkins. And I went home with a stack of napkins about like this, with ideas for how to make this work. A serial killer that people think is not a bad idea. Why not? Any classical French tragedians in the house? Okay, this is not a tangent. I can never remember if it's Corneille or Racine. And I know what an idiot I look like confusing Corneille and Racine, right? Nobody does that. But one of them had the idea for the new play. And he locks himself into his office for 3 days and 3 nights. He doesn't come out, he doesn't eat, he doesn't drink, which for a Frenchman is very serious. And he's in there for 3 days and 3 nights, and his friends are in front pacing. Not a word. What's going on in there? Do you think Corneille, or Racine, is okay? And finally, after 3 days and 3 nights, the doors burst open, and Corneille, or Racine, comes out and says, "It's done! My new play is completely finished! Now all I have to do is write the words." That's where I was with Dexter. It took 4.5 years from that point to finish the book. Only partly because back then I had to work for a living, but also partly because, how to put this properly, I'm a confirmed, deeply settled in my habits, self-hating neurotic. I really believed no one would want to read this, and there was no point in finishing it. Parenthetically, when the book was finished and published, and this is just to explain some of my confusion, when the book came out, one of the early reviews said, "Dexter revitalizes the serial killer genre." And I read that and thought, holy mother of God, there's a genre? What the hell is wrong with people? I honestly, I had no idea. I thought I'd come up with something different, but well. Anyway, I didn't believe in it. And once again, my wife creeps into the story. She did. She read what I had and said, "This is the one. This is the book. This is going to do it. You've got to finish it." And I said, "No, I don't want to. It's no good. Nobody likes this. Why me? Why does it have to be me? Why can't it be somebody else? I don't want to do this." And she said, "Finish it, dear." So 4.5 years later, I finished it. I sent it to our agent at the time, who was a reputable agent, and he had just done a nice deal for us on a book we wrote together called Hunting with Hemingway, which, by the way, is being reissued as an ebook, and All right. I'm not good at self-promotion either. Anyway, this book we co-wrote. I mean, seriously, both of us together. But of course it says Hunting with Hemingway by Hillary Hemingway and Jeff Lindsay. And the agent had made no objection to this. He thought I was some kind of evil Svengali, that I had fastened onto a Hemingway, which is a term that's followed me. Like a Hemingway is generic thing. Which Hemingway would you like today, sir? But he thought I had done that because everyone knows writing talent is genetic, and obviously she was the talent, and I had just fastened on and was sucking the vital fluids out of her. So we sent him the first copy, the first draft of Darkly Dreaming Dexter, which at the time was called The Left Hand of God, and it sat on the floor of his office for a year. Now, as I said, at the time, I'm an expert at self-loathing as well as self-deprecation, and I thought it should probably just sit there. I mean, I don't think anyone wants to read it anyway. You know, I understand completely. However, after a year, I reconsidered, and I asked him to send it back, and we got a new agent. And then another agent, and then 4 more agents, all of whom said, there's really no market for this book. I'd be lucky to get you $5,000 for it, and nobody would read it. And I said, yeah, I know, it was Hillary's idea. But once again, she didn't give up. And when I was totally out of hope, which I'd never had much of anyway, we found exactly what you're looking for. Aspiring writers, take a note here. What you want is a young guy or girl with some experience at a major agency, but just starting out on their own, and they're very hungry to make a name, and that's what we found. And he read the book, and he called me very excited and said, I love this. This is great. I know I can sell it. I just have a few changes I need you to make so that I can sell it. And I resisted because I thought the changes were wrong, but he insisted, and after all, I needed an agent, so I said, okay. That was great. I mailed the finished thing to him. 6 weeks later, I wish I was making this up because this is just like such a great plot detail. I mean, this could go anywhere. 6 weeks later, I get a registered letter, no return receipt requested, from my new agent saying, for reasons I cannot go into, I can no longer be in the agent business at this time. Good luck. And he disappeared. Gone off the face of the earth. Last seen riding his bicycle down Fifth Avenue. So once again, I was back to square zero. And once again, Hillary stepped in. And anyone in the publishing, any connections at all in publishing? No, there's a thing, I'm not making this up, it's called the Korean Mafia. And what it is a network of Korean Americans who've all gone to, Yale or Princeton or something, and they know each other, and they're in positions of some influence in publishing. And one of my wife's good friends was one of these people, and she called this friend and explained the problem and said, I have just the agent. He doesn't take many clients, but I think it's perfect. And so we sent the manuscript to a guy named Nick Ellison. And I wasn't that impressed at first because he only had a couple of clients. And there's people no one's heard of, Nelson DeMille, Olivia Goldsmith, Christopher Moore. And I thought, big deal. Why can't he get Arthur C. Clarke? But a few weeks after that, I got a letter from him, and it was so flattering that I was convinced my mother had written the letter to make me feel better, and I didn't answer it. And he called, and I finally believed it, and I signed with him, and he said, but first, this is not going to affect whether, we sign or not, but there's just a couple of small changes I wish you would think about making in the manuscript. And I go, okay, here we go again. What are they, Nick? He listed tick for tick the changes the other agent had made me make, and suggested I change them back the way I'd had them before. There are moments in everyone's life when you can do nothing but drop to your knees and say, "Thank you, Jesus." And since I still had knees at the time, that's pretty much what I did. Now, so much has happened. My daughters call him Saint Nick because all good things come from him. But it was wonderful. Right after that, it just took off. There was a review of the first book, Darkly Dreaming Dexter, not its original title, in the New Yorker, the magazine. Cheap slasher books never get reviewed there. And a producer for Showtime saw it, read the book, loved it, took it to the network. The rest was history. A quick aside here, because I just brought this up on the title. How are we for time? Oh, God, I haven't talked nearly enough. I'm thinking, by the way, of turning all this into a one-man show, and I have a great title for it. Off Book with Jeff Lindsay. Okay, I'll get another title. I'll get back to you. But the important thing is to keep having ideas. I never did. I need a tangent spotter to remind me to appoint a tangent spotter. But anyway, where was I? Right. Okay, you're the tangent spotter. No, it was the title. The Showtime thing reminded me of it. The original title for the book was The Left Hand of God. This is based on a horrible, complicated pun, which comes down to right hand, dexterous, left hand, sinister. Okay? Now, when it was published in the trades, Jeff Lindsay sells Left Hand of God, you know. I got 2 phone calls. The first one was from my good friend, Stephen Humphrey Bogart. He's a great guy. He's a wonderful guy. He really is. Just one thing bothers me about him I probably shouldn't say, because he lives in this area. I don't want him to hear this and get back to me on it, but really it bothers me. He has his father's face, and I've seen him poolside, his mother's legs. But I love him. He's a great guy, and I consider him a good friend. And he said, "Jeffrey, you can't use that title, Left Hand of God." I said, "What do you mean, Stephen?" "My father did a movie, 1948, Left Hand of God, sorry." The second call I got was from my new editor. And he said, "I've been thinking about that title. I don't know if it's going to fly." I said, "Why not? The movie?" He said, "What?" No. Marketing doesn't like it. I said, "Well, it's the title. I mean, I like it." "Well, I don't know. I came up with an idea, and I tried it out, and marketing really likes it." I said, "Well, okay, what's your idea?" And he said, "Darkly Dreaming Dexter." And I said, "That is probably the stupidest title I've ever heard in my life." And he said, "Well, marketing is really fond of it. Marketing has done some tests, and and besides, it's from the book. I just took it right out of the book, and it said Darkly Dreaming Dexter." And he said, "Well, I don't know." And he said, "Well, think about it, because marketing really likes it." So, "Okay, I'll think about it." And I thought about it for a few days, and he called back and said, "Well?" I said, I really don't like Darkly Dreaming Dexter. It's stupid." He said, "Well, take it a couple of days and try to come up with something better." So I thought about it a lot, and I guess I was talking about it outside of office hours, because my 7-year-old at dinner piped up all of a sudden, "Dad, hey Dad, Dad, hey Dad." This is the ADD kid, you understand. She's the one that almost killed me, because as I was driving at 75 miles an hour up I-75, she said, "Dad, hey Dad, Dad, hey Dad." I said, "Yes, dear, what is it?" "How do elephants throw up?" Think about that for a moment. Imagine you're driving at 75 miles an hour on I-75, picturing how an elephant throws up. I almost went right into that overpass at Bradenton. Anyway, she said, "Dad, I've got a perfect title for your book." I said, "What's that?" She said, "Pinocchio Bleeds." I said, that's nice, honey. And when you, say that again? Pinocchio, it's perfect. It's perfect for the book, because that's what Dexter is. He's a Pinocchio. And he doesn't really, but anyway, it's perfect. I called the editor the next day and I said, I have a perfect title, Pinocchio Bleeds. And he said, well, I'll have to see what marketing thinks, but I don't know. He calls back the next day, you know, marketing really likes Darkly Dreaming Dexter, and I like Darkly Dreaming Dexter, and it came right from your book, so would you maybe think about giving in just this once, and we'll go with Darkly Dreaming Dexter? And I thought and I thought and I thought really hard with the 3 seconds that I had to me. And one of the things I thought was that this is the guy that is Dan Brown's editor too. He must know something. So I said, all right, we'll go with Darkly Dreaming Dexter. It's taken from the book anyway, why not? This is great. Marketing is going to be really happy. He hangs up, and I go on with it. Okay, I got to get used to this. Darkly Dreaming Dexter, but it's from the book. It's probably going to be okay. He knows what he's doing. And he calls back 2 days later, and he says, I found a perfect place in the book for you to insert the phrase, Darkly Dreaming Dexter. If you'll turn to page 238, and you just stick it right in there, I'm back in Hollywood again, being abused. But that's where it came from. And so the whole thing has taken off since then, and it's really been a fun ride. And at the end of this trail, which I sort of am now, I'm not giving away anything if I tell you the title of this new book is Dexter is Dead. That's intended to be a hint. I don't want to give anything away. I want you to actually read the book and go, well, shit, he's dead. Why should I? But I made the promise years ago when I started this series that if I ever got to the point where I felt like it was getting stale, if I felt like I was phoning it in and just going through the motions, like I've seen so many other series writers do, if I got to that point, I said I would stop. Now, I didn't get to the point, but I felt like I could see it on the horizon. And more important, my wife was seeing it on the horizon. And she said, you're tired. You want to move on to something new. And I said, no, I don't. No, this is great. This is it. No, you're tired. And I thought about it, and I went, yeah, I guess so. So I wanted to go out on top. As I said, I'm best at self-deprecation and self-loathing, but I have to say I think this is the best book of the series. I really like it. I hope you do too. Because as I said, I don't want to be the guy that phones it in and just writes because he's getting a paycheck. It's important to me. So I do hope you'll enjoy it. In a minute, I'm going to ask for questions. I have to say, question and answer is one of my favorite things. This is partly because at a certain time my comedy act consisted of, where are you from, dear? And I like that kind of spontaneous thing. But it's also partly because, honestly, I have another 15 minutes to kill. So I'm telling you this now ahead of time because when we do question and answers, here's the way it works. Even division of labor, I do the answers. This means you have to do the questions. So think about it for just a minute, and in order to cover the signs of all the wheels grinding, I have swag. See, I didn't even need the reminder. Did I show it yet? Was everybody impressed? Let me show it once more. I loved hearing that ooh sound. Carol, show the people what we've got. Now, traditionally, I like to do a trivia question from the books. Is there enough people here that have actually read the books that I can do that? Do I have to go with like the trade balance with Peru or something like that? How about Italian opera characters? No. All right. Let me ask a question from the books and see if anybody gets it, because it should really be a fan that... I'm so uncomfortable with the word fan. It seems demeaning somehow. I don't know, I'm back into self-deprecating, self-loathing again. Get me out. Hey, anyone who might have a guess at this? One of Rita's, Rita being Dexter's wife, one of Rita's signature dishes that she cooks that makes him very happy. In the back there, yes. What? I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am. Boy, we're all just guessing. I don't know if that's right. No, I'm sorry.
She had a pork roast.
Boom! Na 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 na. All right. At this time, I would be delighted to take as many questions as we have time for.
I just want to, because this is graciously being taped by the Manatee Educational, we are going to ask that you speak into this mic. So
No ASL, please. I'm sorry.
And I will call on you. Thank you.
You seem to have a lot of insight into psychopathy.
Yes.
And I was wondering what kind of research you did, or how do you gain that insight?
I just guessed a lot. No, I'm lucky enough to have a couple of psychologists in the family. I read all the books on, the FBI profilers and things, and excellent book, The Psychopath Next Door, and everything I could get my hands on. And one of the family psychologists, when I would get an idea and start on it, I'd call her and say, how about this? Would this be right? And she'd say, no, you need to rethink this aspect of it, or no, you're showing too much empathy, or something like that. And this went on for 6 months or so. And one day, as I'm getting further and further into it, I called her and I said, how about this? It's a little unusual, but does this sound right? And I told her, and she said, wow, that's exactly right. Where did you get that? And I said, it just seemed right to me. And she said, let me talk to your wife, please. Did that answer the question?
Yes. Do you consider Dexter a psychopath?
Of course. Yes, absolutely. Right, yeah, over in the back there. If you're really good at projecting, otherwise just throw the microphone at him.
He doesn't need a mic.
Yeah.
That's all right. Hi, Jeff. I'm Andy.
Hi.
I'm curious. You mentioned some of the accommodations you had to make with the book itself and the title, and kind of through the editor of the process. What was some of your experience with when it translated to the show? For maybe some of the accommodations you had to make and your involvement through that.
That's a good question. Now get the microphone away from him quickly, because no more follow-ups. You've taught me a very dangerous lesson. I did 12 years of hard time in Hollywood, and I know what usually happens with an adaptation. And I told Showtime, I talked to the executives and said, listen, I know what it means. I've done it myself. Use me as you want, or ignore me if that's what you'd prefer. And they chose to consult with me, especially on the pilot episode. And I was consulting on that. To show you how that works in Hollywood, they called me up one time and said, we found the perfect actor to play Dexter. I said, great, who is it? He said, Michael C. Hall. And I'm not familiar with him. Oh, he's from 6 Feet Under, have you seen that? I'd seen a couple of them, and I went, I didn't picture Dexter as blonde. I said, oh no, that's Peter Strauss. No, not him, the other one, his brother. I said, his brother? His brother was an ugly dwarf with a horrible... No, that guy? No, totally wrong. No, absolutely not. He couldn't possibly play Dexter. I'm sorry, no, veto. No, absolutely out of the question. Get someone else. And they said, well, we've already signed him. And this brings us back to the definition of consulting in Hollywood. So the first day on the set, I went looking for this guy, Michael, the short, squat, ugly guy with a low brow. And I kept passing this tall, thin, good-looking guy who's, smiling at me, and I'm looking for Michael. And it turns out that was him, and he just wanted to meet me. And I still wasn't convinced, because when someone's being nice to you on a movie set, it means probably you need to hold onto your wallet with both hands and run like hell. But as I sat with the director, we're back to what an idiot I am again. The very first line I saw Michael say in character on screen made me cry. And just to show you I'm not kidding about being an idiot, the line was, refrigerated trucks. And I went, oh God, that's him. It's Dexter. And to answer another question that's an FAQ list, I've never had cause to reconsider that. I think he did a fantastic job. At this point, I can't imagine anyone else playing that part. Another question. Back there? Yeah.
What's your favorite part of Dexter's journey, and what's next?
That's two questions. Yeah. You should at least say the second one in another voice. What's next? My favorite part of the journey, I guess, was when I realized it wasn't a fluke thing and that it was going to last a while. And actually, I'll take that back. My favorite part, my agent kept calling me and saying, he's iconic, the character is iconic. It's iconic. It got so I actually learned to spell the word iconic. That's how bad it was. And of course I didn't believe it, but the day I believed it, shortly before she passed away, my mother called me up one night. And I totally panicked because it was 7:38 in the evening. Between 7:30 and 8 o'clock in the evening, Jeopardy is on. If my mother was calling during Jeopardy, that meant my father had just died. So I grabbed up the phone, went, Mom! And she said, now I know you're going to be all right. And I said, what do you mean? On Jeopardy, the answer was, who is Dexter? And as I said, she passed away shortly after, so it's really a highlight that she saw that first. What's next? I'm at the See What Sticks to the Wall stage right now. I have several projects, and the way my life works is, and I've set this up deliberately, I get to function, and I function only as an idiot savant. Which means that, you know that scene in Blazing Saddles where Mel Blanc is sitting going, whack, 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 whack. That's me every day. And I can't function if I have to deal with bank balance or mortgage payments or anything like that, or any real hard decisions that don't involve things happening in fictional space. So my wife and my agent make all the hard decisions, and when they agree on something, that's it. I don't even get a vote. So what will happen is, at a certain point, they will decide which of these projects I'm working on will be the next one. I think I'm going to be announcing it fairly soon, in the next couple of months. But other than that, I really want to get back into theater, desperately. I've been dusting off a couple of old plays. I've written a couple of new ones. And I even have a vanity movie script which involves someone discovering a reclusive and retired overweight white soul singer and convincing him to make a comeback. I do have some people for the cast, including one of my best friends in the world is a guy named Terry Camilleri. He's from Down Under, and he's best known as Napoleon in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. I can walk into a bar with him anywhere in the world and people go, Napoleon! So he's going to play opposite me, and I have an award-winning director named Hillary something. So who knows, it might happen someday. So that's 2 for 1 right there. Is there another question? Down in front here?
Have you ever considered a woman as a serial killer?
Yes. It doesn't happen often. There was Irene or Eileen, begins with a W, yeah, and not a whole lot more. This is not because there are necessarily, pardon me, that was the bag of peanuts. I told you that was a bad idea. No, better I should burp. No, never mind. Anyway, it doesn't mean that there are more men than women necessarily who are sociopaths. What it does mean is that men are more likely to express their sociopathy through serial murder. Women tend to take on positions of authority where they can manipulate people and torture them. Think about some supervisors you may have had. When a psychologist told me this, he said, you know, mate, he was an Aussie, you know, mate, there's a lot more sociopaths out there than people think. And I said, you mean like more than 6 or 7%? He said, oh, mate, 20. 20%? Where are all the bodies? I said, no, mate, most of them go into business. Right about that time, we had the BP oil spell, and it all started to make sense to me. So I have thought about it. I have some reservations about writing from a woman's point of view, not because I'm worried people will question my gender identity, but because I'm not sure I could do it justice. But there are certainly some out there. And think about this, by the way. The serial killers that that the police catch mostly either A, wanted to be caught, or B, they were so dumb they would just have to be caught eventually. The really good ones, some who might resemble Dexter, are probably out there all the time working happily. And if you question that, go look at the figures nationally for people who disappear and are never seen again, and think about it. So I don't want to frighten anyone unless I'm getting paid for it, but think about that. I think we have time for one more question. Make it a really good one.
There are several professions that would lend itself to serial killing.
CEO is a good one, yeah.
Why did you choose the medical examiner aspect?
It wasn't so much the medical side of it as the working with the police side of it. It occurred to me that a serial killer who actually had an inside track on the course of the investigation would be one more giant step towards getting away with it scot-free. And at that time, it was really hard to resist because I had some good friends who were Miami cops, and they were giving me a little of the inside. In fact, one of them was the model for Deborah, Dexter's sister, sergeant as well. And she told me once, no, I asked her, do cops ever have cute nicknames like they do on TV shows? And she said, yeah. I said, really? Do you have one? Yeah. Well, what's your nickname? And she said, Einstein. Really? Because you're so smart? And because she was. You're smart and you catch criminals? Is that they call you Einstein? And she said, no. Because if my were brains, I'd be Einstein. And that was the moment that Deborah was born. I think that's it. I wanted to close with something traditionally I close with. As you may have gathered by now, I am sort of a theater geek. One of the things I learned about the Chinese theaters stayed with me, which is this. At the end of a performance in Chinese theater, the performers come to the edge of the stage and applaud the audience because they know without the audience, there's no show. So from the bottom of my heart, at the end of this long ride, and I don't mean tonight, I mean the Dexter series, I want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you.
That we all are delighted that Jeff joined us, and we can chat with him a little longer outside. And please join us on October 21st for Nancy Cohn when she concludes our Arts and Lecture series. Thank you again for coming.